Morning. It's another beautiful day, and clear mountains when I look out the window. And started this video at 6:33. Again, my lucky number 33 popping up. In a previous episode or chapter, I talked about being exposed to, being introduced, being shown, being inundated is probably a better word, with all the knowledge that ever has been, ever will be, and is, in a series of collapsing bookshelves falling on me. And the point of interest in this talk is that the library that this resource was stored was in Alexandria, Egypt. And I experienced it in the time frame of ancient Egypt, even though the information had been updated, predated, dated, and updated. The physical structure of the building that I sensed and the times were from antiquity. And today I'm talking about Zen Gnosticism. I found this term, I borrowed this term from Dan Simmons' great science fiction work, Endymion, and which I'm currently totally immersed in. But I liked it because I had my feeling about Gnosticism, Gnostics, had something to do with all wise ones. And I went and did my research. Here it is on my iPod. And I'll try to read this as well as I possibly could. I remember in a recent episode, simulacrum. And when I was reading it, I skipped an important aspect of the Greek representation of making reality something that wasn't a true reflection, like their statues. Their statues were made from the eye, for the eye of the viewer, making the lower part of the body disproportionately smaller than it would be, and the upper portion of the statue larger, so that the perspective of the viewer viewing from below wouldn't see just long lower body and a shorter upper body. They reversed it, shorter lower body and a longer upper body, to make it appear to be correct. So that simulacrum was a reflection of reality that was unreal, not reality, that appeared to be reality. Okay, so today I will exercise more caution when I read it to you from on my iPod. And I'll try to be a better reader, okay? Because it might be boring, but the information is relevant and I wanted to share. So let's begin Gnosticism, if you look up Gnostic, the practitioner of Gnosticism, you will see that it's about having knowledge. And as I've mentioned many times before, my path along Zen, once I found the proper, the most appropriate yoga for me is about knowledge, using our faculties to examine, to reflect on knowledge, in the hopes that it will open or be the key to wisdom, the ultimate expression of information, knowledge. So Gnosticism is about having this knowledge. It comes from a Judeo-Christian hybrid from the 1st and 2nd centuries. And their core belief was that the material world was caused by an emanation of the highest God, transformation, trapping the divine spark within the human body. This spark could be liberated by gnosis, or knowledge. And their precepts were not excessive, first of all, not limiting in any sense, but it did include all matter is evil, and non-material spirit realm is good. There is an unknowable God who gave rise to many lesser spirit beings called aeons. And I want to talk about aeons. Aeons are spiritually perfected beings that reside in a realm above. And it was these spirit guides, if you will, who, according to this tradition, created the physical world that we find ourselves at times trapped in. For what purposes? Well, speculation, reflection. What purpose does this material world contain or present to us? Well, it's easy to see the limitations. But what about other? Could we look at this as a gift? And in the sense that we're born into a body with almost eventually our spiritual reflection, our efforts to set out on our spiritual path is mandated from heaven, from this particular view. We're given this body, we're given these senses, and we use them to create the material world that we find ourselves in. And it's this relationship with the material world, this sense that there's division and otherness, that the birth of the ego takes place. And if you look at it in a greater sense, cosmic sense, perhaps these aeons, these spiritually evolved beings in realms above, thought that this journey, this obstacle that can be seen as an obstacle, but it's also a gift. Because as far as we know at this point in our understanding, without this human shell, without this body, we wouldn't be capable of learning what's next in our evolution, which includes reconciling dualities, recognizing the falseness of the sense of division, of separation, leading to embracing the oneness of us all. And in this process, the ego necessarily falls outside. Gnosticism, unlike the Christian sense of sin, Gnosticism does not deal with sin, only ignorance. It's in our ignorance that we find duality. It's in our ignorance that we believe that our personality or our ego, and again, they're not interchangeable. The personality is something that's developed, that's born within, that remains with you no matter what your spiritual progress, until the time that you leave the body. But ego is not your personality. Ego is your sense of separateness. Your personality can understand, can entertain completion, where your ego can't, has to be shed along with the illusion of separateness, division. All of them are happily laid to rest. I've mentioned before that we all carry a big sack full of crap on our back, weighing us down. And that's the preconceived notions, that's the ideas of suffering, the ideas of that create separation and division. And at some point, we can happily put this load down and stand up straighter, breathe deeper, and embrace the unity and the beauty of the sense of experiencing, of knowing the oneness shared by all. To achieve salvation, one needs to get in touch with secret knowledge. And here, how about is the secret sacred? Because the tradition had been to guard this jealously, in fact, and there seems to be some contradiction that this ensured the lineage of a master to a disciple. that the Master would hold tightly onto this secret or sacred knowledge. And this tradition is withering, although teachers still have their place, serve ultimately the same person, the same purpose, to bring you to the precipice where you must decide to jump off or not. Thus, a teacher can take you to there and no farther. They can carry you, they can guide you, they can direct you to here. But the rest, just as we're born alone, just as we die alone, we must make this leap of faith, leap of surrender on our own. Tradition persisted in Western esotericism and modern spirituality, and refers to knowledge based on personal experience or perception, mystical or esoteric knowledge of the divine, an inward knowing. Those who are oriented towards knowledge and understanding, or perception and learning as a particular modality of living. So all of this echoes truth for me in my own personal journey and experiences. The Essenes, the Christian Essenes, were Jewish. And because their origin predated the birth of Christ. And overlapped. So the Essenes were part of the early Christian teachings of Paul and John, with a growing emphasis on the opposition between flesh and spirit. Only the spirit could be saved. The flesh turns to ashes, doesn't it? Along with the ego. And it's the sacred, the spark within that survives. So they taught about God is known as monad, which means the one. And He's is the high source of pleroma. Pleroma is the region of light. That first thing to come into existence and begat the dyad, sense of two, which begat the numbers. So this can be seen as kind of the beginning of the Old Testament, the Bible, begat to pass on to. So from the one, through the agencies of the aeons, the highly spiritually evolved energy forces, the illusion of the dyad of duality was created. The heavenly pleroma, remember that's the light realm, is the center of divine life. The region of light, love are well occupied by spiritual beings such as Aeon, eternal beings. Jesus is interpreted as an intermediary between Aeon, who was sent from the pleroma with the purpose of helping humanity recover the lost knowledge of the divine origins. The divine light, or consciousness, descends through a series of stages graduations, worlds becoming progressively more material and embodied. In time, it will turn around to the one, epistrophe, retracing the steps through spiritual knowledge and contemplation. The Gnostic movement does contain information about the historical justice as well. Instead of seeing the world end in apocalypse, as the Bible does, the mainstream, what we're becoming, the mainstream interpretation of Christianity. The kingdom of heaven is already here within each of us. The earliest teachings of Christianity saw Jesus as a wisdom teacher, promoting a new theology of mysticism and a theological commitment to a fully present kingdom of heaven here and now. Where it becomes interesting to me is that this library, this source of Gnosticism, can be traced to Alexandria in particular, the place where my introduction, my exposure, my blessing of experiencing knowledge for the sole purpose of experiencing wisdom came from this Alexandria. And there's a famous historical person called Clement of Alexandria, who was a student of Paul the Apostle, one of the 12 apostles, which he claimed, this Clement of Alexandria, this depository of all the accumulated information at that time, through his teacher, who was a student of Paul, was believed that they received the gospel directly by revelation from God. So it's this revelation, it's this exploration that's available to all of us. So it's always interesting to me to look for commonalities, and this Zen Gnosticism is a synthesis of what are considered separate spiritual endeavors. To look within Christianity and see that Christ was a Buddha. Christ was a bridge to the beyond, just as every Buddha that ever has been and ever will be is a bridge to the beyond. Not only are they a bridge to the beyond, but they're a light. They emanate this light from the light realm, this spark which is within each of us is opened, is allowed to flower, and it blooms into this essence around us that we carry of light. And each one of us are different at different points in this flowering or this unveiling of this beacon surrounded by, sadly at this point, still surrounded by darkness. But it's this hope. And again, hope isn't my favorite word, but it's this example that each of them have set. So to see the similarities might be more difficult between the different religions. Might be more difficult than to see the differences. But as religion, as we know it, is really just a social, political, and most times economic model of control of the peoples. But in their truest form, each of them has their spirituality, their realm of the mystical, of the esoteric. Each religion, you don't have to look too deeply to find movements within. So Gnosticism was this movement within, emanating from Judeo-Christian tradition. But just as Hinduism, I talk about the yogas, jhana yoga, karmic yoga, raja yoga, and bhakti yoga, all traditions coming out of Hinduism, just as Buddha, I might remind you, Buddha came out of this same tradition. And within this background, this Gnosticism, this idea of exploring information and knowledge in the search for wisdom has a universal appeal to elements of each of the major religions. So it's not a stretch. It's completely compatible to take Gnosticism from the Greek and take Zen from the transformation of Buddhist teaching through the Buddhas that came after him, and Bodhidharma, the first patriarch to the Chinese. And I always forget his direct lineage. I want to say 24, 25, 26. I'll look it up. But first patriarch took his Bodhidharma, took Buddha's message to China, what is today is China. From what is today Nepal, where at Buddha's time was India, he took it into China. And he was called the Wandering Persian because he looked different than the people he found himself amongst. But the tradition of Chan, which was transferred through Korea to Japan, it became Zen. And the Zen, that was most effective for me was jhana Zen, the self-reflection, the journey from knowledge to wisdom. So you can see the similarities, you can see the connections, because the tradition survives until our present day. So this blessing, this wisdom has always been known to each and every one of us. And that's why I believe that this image that I had of being in Alexandria with the tall bookshelves crashing down in front of me, one after another, in an almost endless procession, was symbolic of the wisdom that's available to each of us. And indeed, we will discover not only this wisdom, but we will become wise enough to embrace the understanding that we've never been apart from this wisdom. It's only our illusions leading to delusions that made us feel separate or divided. So that's why when this discovery is made, then we can become again that which we've always been. And indeed, always are. This voyage to discovery, this simple discovery of seeing, being, of feeling, supra senses, extraordinary senses, that all is so ordinary. To rediscover wisdom that is and has and will be who we are.